All right. Hey everyone, Chad here. So today's an exciting day. Today I'm going to be breaking down my honest and realistic journey of what it actually looked like for me in tech sales. From way before I even knew about tech sales to finding out about tech sales, learning about it, and then navigating me breaking into tech sales, the limiting beliefs that I had, the fears that I had, all that stuff, right? The mistakes that I made, the struggles I ran into when trying to land a good tech sales role. I'm going to talk through all of that. And then also my journey in tech sales, which I've been in tech sales for over 2 years, close to 3 years. I've took it to six figures. I've taken it to consecutive 10K plus per month. I've even had outlier $18,000 plus months in this vehicle. And it saved me and it served me so well that I decided to help other people. And I've been helping people along the way get into this vehicle and do that and perform well and make the income that they're after. And here's the thing. Tech sales isn't everything it's talked out to be. Not everyone in this industry is making what's promised by employers or really building a solid skill set that they can take wherever they want in whatever they want to do in life. Because the industry as a whole, and I'm going to talk through some mistakes that I made, not every company or opportunity is going to actually give you that potential that you're after and the income that you're after and the development you're after. And that's just the reality. And so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of reality, okay? So let's just get into it. Let me set the scene. So back in 2020, let's go to 2020, okay? This was like the pandemic. And what I had been doing during this period of my life, I was 20 years old, okay? I graduated college when I was like 17 and in 2017. And then 3 years later, I'm a sophomore in college, which is 1 year away from graduating, okay? And this was during the pandemic, but I was still living at school, away at school, out of my hometown, far away. And I was living in a house off campus with some friends. And I mean, literally what we were doing was just partying. And this is also an interesting time because this was when the world was going more and more remote. But I wasn't actually in the work field yet at all. I mean, I wasn't even doing anything for work. I was just living on student loans, which fast forward, I ended up having like 50 grand in debt after graduating in 2021. But yeah, basically I kind of just lived it up in college. I kind of was putting off responsibility during this time. I was doing like online class and just, partying all the time in secret. I even threw a party at the house I was staying at one time and ended up getting a ticket for it during this time and having to go to court. But anyways, those are side stories. A year later, 2021, I ended up graduating. Okay, I graduated, I ended up actually having to switch my major halfway through college to an easier one because I was flunking. I was absolutely flunking. I wasn't doing the work. I was partying too much, showing up late to class or skipping altogether. I don't know what got into me, right? The paradigm that I was operating under was vastly different than the paradigm that helped me actually make 10K per month in something, okay? And so I was trying to live it up while I was young. I was trying to put off responsibility because I thought that no matter what, adult life is going to suck. I'm just going to have to work some, shitty hourly job for the rest of my life until retirement. This is the paradigm that I was downloaded that caused me to try and make the most out of my, early 20s in a way that I thought was making the most out of it by partying. And so after graduating, I quickly realized that wasn't the way. Pleasure seeking and partying and just putting off responsibility, it wasn't the way. And I got hit hard, right? I got hit hard with reality in the world. And so what I got into first was I started just working at a restaurant, right? I moved back home with my parents. This was in 2021. I started working at a restaurant, just like serving tables, just like bringing food out, not even like serving. I ended up making drinks as well, like bartending, like half bartending. And I did that for a year after graduating. And yeah, I was making enough money to buy some stuff, but it wasn't enough to move out of home, be independent, have the things that I want, start investing in myself. I didn't have that, right? And so eventually, I would have done that for a while because I had no sense of what to do in life. College didn't even teach me how to get a job or how to find a job or how to prove I have a skill set. Okay. This is all stuff that you can do, by the way. And I teach people, but anyways, if it weren't for a friend of mine was working in like this television advertising company. Okay. It was kind of like a TV advertising company where, we were responsible for just like making sure like the data is correct so that the ads will play at the right times. And so he was working this job, and it was like a corporate job, right? And so he said, hey, we have an opening. He reached out to me. He thought I'd be a good fit for it. And I said, screw it. Let's try it, right? And so this was my first ever interview prep experience where, I ended up applying, getting the role because I got referred by a friend. And it was in the state I was in. So it was in New York. Okay. Now it was location tied, but it was actually flexible. So I was allowed to actually work from my home, but I couldn't travel, or I couldn't leave the state and work out of the state and stuff like that. It still had a lot of restrictions. Okay. And little did I know this was going to be the first job that was going to set the tone for jolting me into a place of like, okay, what do I want to do? You know what I mean? Because when I got in this role, I ended up actually just watching YouTube videos, prepping. I put so much effort into doing this interview that I actually landed it. I mean, this is probably one of the worst interviews you'll ever see. I went on, I was so nervous. I was literally shaking. I had a whole suit on, but it was in my bedroom. You could see it wasn't so clean. There was some mess. And I hopped on, and, I was literally shaking, trembling. I didn't know how to speak. And then the interview ended. There was a couple interviews. There was 2, but those interviews ended, and I had no doubt in my mind that I flunked it, that I wasn't going to get the offer. But somehow they gave it to me. Somehow they offered it to me, right? And so this was the first belief. This was the first, click in my brain where I was like, oh, wow. Because I had no skills, guys. I had no skills other than, talking to people at a restaurant, which is a skill, by the way. And if you have that, it's absolutely enough to get into sales, but we'll talk about that later in the video. But I thought I had no skills. And so I realized, oh, wow, I actually am valuable. And that was the first kind of realization that I have inherent value just as I am. Right. And so that was a big paradigm shift in terms of understanding the job market and how, yes, there are entry-level jobs out there that you don't need to have experience to do, that they'll pay you and train you. And that's exactly what sales is, but I hadn't found out about sales yet. Now, technically, my job here was a sales assistant, but it wasn't traditional sales in terms of calling people and doing this stuff. It was kind of just entering data. Okay, so this was 2022 or 2023. So this was 2022, okay, 2022. I think I landed it the fall of 2021, 2022. I'm doing this thing. I did it for a year and a half, okay? And through that, I was literally working 5 days a week. It was taxing, okay? The amount of numbers and data and attention and corrections and just mindless numbing data that I had to do, data entry work. It had nothing to do with speaking to people, speaking to prospects, anything like that. This stuff started to tax me. Okay, nothing against it. I think it was a great role, right, for the stage I was in, and it taught me some things, how to be professional, And it also was valuable because I got to a certain level of, impatience with this type of work that I just started to, it forced me to start thinking ahead, right? And so I think, there was one day I woke up and I was like, I just got to do something else. I got to figure something else out. Now, the first thing I started to try to do was invest my paycheck into the stock market and see if I could retire early, because I didn't even know about sales or entrepreneurship or any of these things that I'm going to talk about. So that was my first kind of effort to do something. That was my first effort to change my situation. Was, okay, if this is what work is like, if this is what life is like after school and in adulthood, I gotta get this done as quick as possible. So I started to look into ways to increase the money I had in the S&P 500 or high yield savings accounts and just try and retire early. I was even looking at the FIRE method or things of people who are trying to go for early retirement. And I started doing that. Like I even like sold some like I bonds. Like I was trying to like take the money I had and like try to just retire early and like, you know, use like an IRA and stuff like that. Okay, so I did that and I moved some stuff around, and eventually I lost interest in it because that's a slow lane. Eventually I read the book, it's called Unscripted by MJ DeMarco. Unscripted by MJ DeMarco. Yes, he also has another book, The Millionaire Fast Lane. Okay, The Millionaire Fast Lane by MJ DeMarco. I read those two books. I think the first one I read was The Millionaire Fast Lane. That changed my fucking paradigm, okay? It showed me that there's a slow lane way to actually build wealth and freedom, and then there's a fast lane way. Now, it's not a get-rich-quick thing. It's just there are vehicles out there that allow you to create money in a slow way, and it also talks about how a lot of those ways are actually kind of rigged against you because if you're just investing 10% of your paycheck in the stock market, you're not even guaranteed that you're going to be able to retire at 60. You're not even guaranteed those returns, right? And there's so many other intricacies in that. But if a fast lane vehicle is something where you're delineating your time for money, right? You're not just trading your time for money. You're going toward a more results-based type of work. Okay, I'm going to explain this. So in slow lane, it's just hourly pay. Now, sometimes, there's some examples of outlier jobs out there where you get paid a certain amount an hour and it's actually very lucrative and you enjoy it and it's fulfilling. Cool. Okay. But for the most part, working an hourly job and just getting paid by the hour and kind of climbing the corporate ladder and just getting a incremental raises and then, incrementally saving slowly. That's a slow lane way to like build a average life. A slow average life where maybe you don't do any crazy things. Maybe you don't own any crazy things. Maybe you don't, enjoy the time you're spending 40 plus hours a week, which is like 80% of your life. Maybe you don't enjoy that and it takes a bite out of the life you could have lived if you actually had more freedom and income and leverage. Okay. So then I learned about fast lane stuff. Okay. Fast lane, again, it's not hourly stuff. Okay, things like sales, things like entrepreneurship, these are probably the two biggest ones. Sales, you don't get paid per hour. Okay, you do get paid per hour, but on top of that, you get paid commission. That's where the real money's made. Okay, for the most part. And so what happens is you're not like clocking in and clocking out. You sell, you get a result. Okay, you sell things or book meetings. Okay, I'm gonna talk about sales more in depth. And you get paid based on the input you put in, based on the result you get, based on the output you get. Sorry, not the input, the output. And so this gives you more freedom. Why? Because the better you get at it, the less you have to work and the more money you make, right? Or if you want to pour more energy in, you'll exponentially increase your income. This is why you see people in tech sales that are millionaires, right? This is why you see people in entrepreneurship that are millionaires, okay? A lot of hourly type careers don't even have the capacity to get to millionaire status at all. It just isn't possible. When you have that big of a vision for your life, freedom and income, it's just, you have to go away from slow lane vehicles. You have to. It's the only choice. And this book opened my mind to that. Okay, entrepreneurship, you're not getting paid per hour. Who's paying you? Your clients. Okay, now it's up to you to get them the result that they want in whatever shape that form that takes, right? And that's how you increase your income and not have to have it be tied to your hour where you have to clock in and clock out. Okay, and that's why it's scalable, because the better you get at getting your client results, the more you can scale it. And there's different vehicles for that, but that's called a fast lane vehicle. The other thing about it is in those things you make asymmetrical returns versus symmetrical. If you just put your money in your 10% of your paycheck in the stock market, that's a symmetrical incremental return. Okay? Same with climbing the corporate ladder in a job. It's a symmetrical return, meaning it's going to be like the line is going to be straight and it's going to just slowly go up and up, slowly go up and up. It's probably going to have some dips too. But with entrepreneurship, you're probably going to be like this for a while, just going nowhere. And then you're going to shoot up when something works and you scale it and it takes off. Okay. And your income shoots up like that. Same with sales, right? Sales is a more linear, but it's exponential, right? You're going to close, all of a sudden when you build the skill, now you have this skill, you can sell, you can get into higher leverage companies or positions, you can sell higher ticket products, and that's an asymmetrical return while working the same amount of time, because the better you get at the skill and the better you're positioned in the market in terms of the good tech sales company versus, and I'm going to talk about this, versus like a bad one where, you're not getting paid what's promised and stuff like that, which happens for people. And I'm going to talk about how I actually made that mistake. Okay? So, that's kind of the scene, guys. So, this is when I learned that. Now, I'm still in this role. I'm still in this corporate job. And I'm struggling. And I remember there was one morning I was so fed up. I stood up, looked in the mirror, and said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do the slow lane path. Okay, I had to choose. And this is where I came to a place of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, which a lot of people operate their life with. They have 1 foot in something and 1 foot out, right? They're trying, they're kind of like toying with the idea of entrepreneurship or trying another vehicle, and they have 1 foot in there and they talk about it so much. You probably know people like this. They talk about it, but then when you look at what they actually do, they're really, even subconsciously, they're comfortable in their job. They don't have a reason to quit their job that's paying them a cozy hourly rate per week, and it's cozy. You skate, you have your weekends free, and which you also do in sales, but they just clock in, mess around on their phones, sit at a desk, waste their whole week not learning any skills, just making like an hourly rate, and then spending a portion of that each weekend, and then saving some, and then investing in the stock market, and that's what their life looks like forever. And they talk about the idea of, I'm gonna get rich, I'm gonna do something like this, but it's 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And so this morning at that time, 2022, I got so fed up, I put both feet in. I psychologically put both feet in. I changed my identity to being an entrepreneur. Okay, I said, even though I'm in a job right now, I'm an entrepreneur. My identity shifted. I put both feet in, and that put me in a place where, okay, now I am an entrepreneur, and now my brain's gonna fight to uphold that identity. And so I started to wake up at 5 a.m. I started to try building businesses online. This is before I even knew about sales, which I'm going to talk about how it has its place deeper. And so I was waking up at 5 a.m. every day. I tried so many things, guys. I was buying courses. I was trying all these different things. E-com store, digital art store, print on demand hoodie brand, beats. I was selling my beats online. I had like a hobby of making music, which I never thought I would do for money. But then I was like, all right, let me try this out. I was selling beats to artists. I ended up doing freelance work for I tried graphic design, some stuff. I was doing freelance copywriting, right? I was trying to build an independent business that could operate and yield me and supplement my income so I could quit my hourly job. Okay, that was my number one goal. And so 5 a.m. wake ups 5 days a week. And also I was trying this on the weekends too. And then I would work the whole day. I'd just be so exhausted, guys. I'd be so exhausted. But I was trying things, throwing stuff up at the wall. But I got discouraged. I got so discouraged because none of the stuff was yielding me enough to supplement my income. And I kind of would try one thing, go deep into it, and then get taken away by the next thing, go deep into it, get taken away by the next thing, go deep into it. I had shiny object syndrome, okay? Not that any of the things that I tried, some of them weren't really going to be able to make it, but some of them would have if I stuck with it. But on top of that, I also just realized that I just didn't resonate with some of these things. And so I was in a place where I was so lost, so discouraged. I was probably making a couple $100 a month from some of this stuff, unpredictably still, right? And it wasn't enough. And so this is when I was like, man, I don't even know what I want to do in business, right? I started to realize that business is a long game, right? Whatever you do, you have to stick with it. There's no get rich quick in business. I learned that the hard way, okay? And so I learned, okay, whatever I do, I damn better stick with. And so that put me in a new mind state. This is when I started to learn about, actually it was during freelance copywriting. I was in a course, and this guy named Kyle Milligan, he's he's a very credible copywriter in the space. He talked about the idea of aligned apprenticeship. Okay. And this idea was that, okay, a lot of people are trying to build a business with copywriting, but what if you just got paid to like learn the skill first and then build a business? And so he put me onto that first, about copywriting. And so that's what I did actually. I ended up applying for a copywriting position at a company, using the skills that I learned about interview prep. And I ended up getting a role, but not as the copywriter, but it was at the company where they had some of the best copywriters in the space, called Stansberry Research. But what they did was they put me in the sales department, okay? Now this was a blessing in disguise, but I took it because my long-term goal was still to build a business, my own business, and I thought it was going to be freelance copywriting, right? Because I had struggled so much with freelance copywriting. Like, yes, I was able to have sales calls and I just sucked at sales calls. I didn't know how to close deals, negotiate contracts, and that's why I made no money and ended up working for free, right? Out of pity. And they paid me some money out of pity. But there was so many skills involved. I had to learn how to do sales, outreach. I had to learn how to, do marketing and learn copywriting and get them results as well, client fulfillment, and also understand the market and the industries that the clients that I was working with, how it worked and all of that. It was so many things I was way in over my head for my simple goal of just like supplementing my income with something that could build independence for me that wasn't hourly and that would put me on track to be in a fast lane vehicle, right? And so I ended up getting that job in the sales department, and I was trying to work toward getting a copywriter role so I could learn the skills as an apprentice, where it was aligned that I was doing a job, yes, but that skill was going to give me freedom because it would help me get paid to learn instead of like failing on my own in my parents' basement and not have to struggle. It would help me get paid to learn until I was ready to build my own business, which would come easier, okay? Now, during this time was when I was networking with people and I was actually building my social media because I started to get interested in YouTube, and I had been interested in YouTube and making content and a personal brand and starting to do like write things on Twitter. I was into writing, I was into making videos, I always have, okay? So I was into this on the side, and during this time I was connecting with people on Twitter. I was networking, I was trying to like just network with people, meet people in the digital space, meet other entrepreneurs, because, in my job, it was hard. There weren't really like-minded people like that. And so I ended up networking with people and also in some communities that I was in. And I found a mentor, okay? I got introduced to somebody who was in sales, all right? Remote sales specifically. And this is the first time I learned about the remote sales space, okay? Now, I learned about high ticket sales. I learned about tech sales, right? This was my first introduction, okay? So I ended up actually investing a lot of money, okay? I probably invested like $19,000 at the start for a mentorship for a whole year, okay? And I think, I have my opinions about mentorships like that. I think for something like this, you don't need to invest $19K to get a good result. But that's how the space is. You got to be wary about things out there. Now, I don't regret it. I learned a ton, and I actually had amazing mindset downloads during this mentorship, and it put me in the position of realizing the capacity of tech sales, okay? So I was 23. This is 2023. This is literally just 2 years after graduating college and kind of flailing around, okay? So I invested in mentorship eventually, and that was a scary thing. Like, let me take a step back and talk about that, okay? I no longer wanted to build a copywriting business, and I knew I wanted to like build a coaching business or YouTube business or something of that nature. So throughout that time in that new company that I was trying to be a copywriter at, I just lost sight of that goal. I forgot about it. And I was in a sales department where I was learning and getting some skills. I was calling people. I was speaking to people over the phone. I was closing, and taking orders and closing people on the phone for income, right? I was doing it. It was kind of like a inbound closing role. Now, it didn't pay the best because it was like an SDR role versus a BDR role, where you actually have like, you find new companies, find new deals, you get paid tons more. And this is the role that I recommend you get in tech, BDR, but it's also called SDR. But the role that I was in was kind of like a customer service / SDR role. It wasn't really like a sales role. I didn't even realize it at the time, how much sales stuff that I was learning, but I was, okay? And it was kind of like a fintech company. It was like a fintech company that sold like investment newsletters and publications and stuff, okay? So it was kind of like tech, but I wouldn't consider it like tech sales. But I was there for like 7 months or 6 months. And that's when I invested in mentorship. 28 days later, okay, I put my all in. I ended up getting my first role. Now, here's the thing. I didn't get the right guidance. I didn't feel like I had the right guidance from the mentorship I was in, although I was learning a ton in the long run over that span of that year. But yeah, not every mentorship is not every single mentorship is going to be aligned, right? Now, I think that investing in yourself in any way is gonna teach you something regardless, and it's all valuable. But you do have to be careful with mentorship and who you invest with. Okay, that's just the reality. But I made some mistakes because I didn't seek the right guidance. I didn't have enough clarity or hands-on help, and I ended up getting the first role that came my way. Okay, so this is what I was doing. I basically was mass applying. I was mass applying to tons of companies, and this is where I was struggling the most, okay? I mean, I had struggled for so long. I felt like I just wanted to make like 10K a month in a way that was engaging, that I actually knew was building my skills and putting me on the path toward freedom, and not just down that rabbit hole of slow lane growth, okay? That was the biggest drive. And that's why, if you can imagine yourself in my shoes, working in a role, you may be in this position, but you're working a role, you're so fed up with just hourly pay or just making like 50K a year. It's just that you'll do anything to get into a vehicle where you have that potential for like 10K a month, 20K a month, okay? And that's where I was, and I said, screw it. I'm investing. I had savings that I had just saved over a while, which was amazing because I lived so frugally. I was in my parents' basement. That I just invested. I went all in. Like I invested. I had so much student debt still. Like I didn't even have the money to do this, but I just did it anyways. Okay. It was actually the best decision I ever made. Okay. Because it changed my life. When you make an energy exchange of cash, it changes something. It shows the universe that you're committed to something, and it actually forces your brain and makes it easier for you to do the work, because you kind of put yourself in a corner like, damn, I invested in this. If I don't do this, I'm a failure, right? So regardless of if the mentorship is even like the best mentorship in the world, it's gonna it helped me. It changed my life. It changed my life. Okay, now there's a lot of good that came from the mentorship too, okay? Tons of good, amazing mindset. My mentor, I praise him to this day. I think he changed my life, my mindset, my paradigm, okay? It's just, not every mentorship is going to give you the hands-on that you feel like you're going to get. So you just have to be wary of that. And that's okay. And this is why I now help guys, and I put my all into, hey, hands-on. I'm with you one-to-one. And this is why I do my one-to-one mentorships, which by the way, if you want to check that out, first link in the description, you can book a call with me and directly chat with me where I can talk to you about if it makes sense and what the structure looks like. So if you want to check that out, first link. But this is why I have this newfound passion to help people in the space, right? There's a lot of mud in the space. There's a lot of lack of clarity. There's a lot of people just trying to make money. And, what I strive for is impact, right? It's not just about getting a role, because you'll see what happened. So what happened to me is I was just trying to get a role as quick as possible, and I ended up getting a role that wasn't the best, okay? Anybody can land a role, but can anybody land a role that they have a sales team, good managers, top performers to learn from, on-target earnings, you're making the income that's promised in the job description? That is something you actually have to fight for, okay? And that's what I learned the hard way. So what ended up happening is I ended up getting into a startup company, okay? And I took on way too much responsibility, okay? I was responsible for full cycle, demos, closing, and I didn't close a single deal. I didn't close a single deal in this first role, okay? Now I was booking meetings, and I was like learning that SDR skill for myself. I was literally booking meetings for myself, taking the demos, and I didn't close a single thing. Now, it wasn't because I was bad at sales, because I think everybody is inherently good at sales to some degree. If you just show up, sales is easy, guys. Anybody can do this, okay? But the thing was, the product I was selling, it didn't have product market fit yet. And what does that mean? It was such a new stage product that it actually hadn't really been sold yet. It hadn't really been sold yet, and there was only 2 other people on the team. And so that made me struggle, okay? I didn't make commission at all, right? I was just getting paid the base, which still was more than I was making in my other role. And that's the reality in a lot of these tech companies. You're going to make more from just base alone than a lot of these like 9-to-5 jobs. And on top of that, usually you're going to have like 20,000 plus in commission, right? So that's why it's so lucrative. And I'm going to talk more about specifics, but I struggled in this role and I did it for like 6 months. Okay. 5 months later, I started to reposition myself. I started to rethink, and I said, you know what? I've been doing this booking meeting stuff for a while. I don't feel like I'm ready for account executive yet because I still saw myself as a beginner, but I wanted to get into the best of the best. I wanted to make 6 figures. I wanted to make 10K a month. And so this is when I went all in. I remember I took a trip to Finland with some friends, and we did some visioning. We did some goals for the new year. This was like 2023 going into 2024. Okay, so I was 2023 at the time, and it was December, and we went to Europe, and we visioned together, and we planned what our 2026, not 2026, what our 2024 was going to look like. Okay, and it was scary. We did some visioning, and this is also what I help my clients do: make a vision board for themselves and get crystal clear on what they want and when, and their life, their complete mindset changes, their energy changes. This stuff is so powerful. Okay, it also works with the subconscious too. But I did that as soon as I get home. Okay, it's January, and 2 months go by. So January comes by. February hits. I'm in conversations with HubSpot, which is one of the biggest companies in the space. Okay. Now as soon as I got home in January, my new goal was to position myself to a new company. Okay. And so that's what I was doing. And it was hard because this is where also mentorship came in so much handy. I was working with a few mentors. I had my mentor that I was working with for like a year. I was paying like recruiters. I was working with like a recruiter that actually used to work at HubSpot that now like did full-time recruiting and interview prep. I was like paying sales managers on Fiverr to like teach me the inside sauce. I was investing everything in getting the best possible role I could. Okay. And so when HubSpot's job application popped up, I got so excited. Okay. I applied for it right away. I was ready to move. And what happened was I got denied. I got denied on the posting. Okay. And this is when I brought it up to the mentors that I was working with. I learned, hey, it's not enough to just apply to a posting. Okay. Everybody's doing that. Okay. And in companies that are desirable, you want to stand out. And so this was the first kind of lesson I learned, that you have to stand out. Okay, so what I ended up doing was I ended up connecting with an account executive. Okay, I ended up connecting with an account executive in the role at HubSpot. And I asked him if he had 10 minutes, and I ended up just doing a phone call with him. I outbound cold called him, and I said, yeah, hey man, look, honestly, I've been really looking into HubSpot. I have this much sales experience. And he was just like genuine with me. He said, look, man, you sound well spoken. Let's hop on a Zoom call, right? We hop on a Zoom call, we shoot the shit, and I make friends with this guy. And he's motivated to refer me too, because he gets paid if he refers somebody. That's another secret about these tech companies, is they're motivated to refer you if you actually, if they think you're a good fit for it. They're gonna refer you, because then they get a bonus, a referral bonus it's called. So it's a win-win for both of you guys. And then if they refer you, you basically get guaranteed an interview. Okay, so this is what I teach my clients to do. This is just one of the many things you can do to stand out. This is what I teach my clients to do, is to connect with people, right? It's not enough to just apply on the posting. Okay, and also there's so many pieces of this. You have to have your resume and branding right. You have to have a clean LinkedIn profile. You have to be well spoken. You have to be able to go on camera like this, where it's not just your phone. And you have to have a clean complexion, a clean background. You have to know how to speak and look at the camera. Okay, there's a lot of skills to this in terms of portraying yourself across, because these companies are looking at you and they're going, okay, can this person sell for my prospects? Tech sales is fully remote, guys. Okay. And so what ended up happening is he referred me in, and I was all in. I mean, I have started to obsess about interview prep. I was waking up at 5 a.m. every morning with one of my close friends. And by the way, he ended up getting into Salesforce at literally only 19. Okay. So that was insane. He was working right alongside me. We were doing interview prep together in the same mentorship. We were working with similar mentors, and we were out 5 a.m. every day. We were doing like an hour of interview prep, guys. So people underestimate the amount of prep that is needed to get a job like this, okay? A lot of people think it's just la-di-da, push a few buttons. No, you gotta obsess. If you wanna get a company in tech sales that's actually gonna make you 6 figures, and 10K per month and has that income potential that you can do it in a quick amount of time, like, you got to obsess about this. You got to show them that you're passionate about them, right? And this is all stuff that I reframes that I help people with in my mentorship. But guys, this is not something that's just like push a few buttons, okay? This is a lucrative vehicle, okay? And the reason I chose tech sales over high ticket sales was because high ticket sales is 0 commission, all right? And as a beginner, that's going to be hard, right? And so what I ended up doing was getting into tech sales, right? Because at the start, guys, the income potential for tech sales, when you first break in and you don't need any experience, you don't need any degree or anything like that, okay? Friend that I was working with, he got into Salesforce at 19 with no degree, okay? He was 19, he just graduated high school and just went all in on sales, okay? And now he's making well over 6 figures, all right? So the income potential for tech sales, SDRs and BDRs, you're going to make like 70K per year, okay, from the start as on-target earnings. On-target earnings are you get paid what's promised. You get paid a commission on top of a base pay. And so the difference between high-ticket sales and that is at the start, you're still getting paid a lucrative income to get trained to do the work. Right? A lot of people, like a lot of these employers don't care if you have sales experience because they have programs in place if you're getting a good company to train you up to speed. And honestly, the younger you are, the better, because the older you are, it's actually harder the older you are to get a sales role because you have habits. And these companies want malleable, fresh, coachable, open-minded people. And young people are more like that, okay? Because everybody's different. Every company's different. They sell different. And so they want people who can be molded into the best sales rep for them, okay? And so the younger you are, the better it is. People have so many limiting beliefs around this stuff, okay, guys? But anyways, I ended up obsessing about it, and I landed the role. It was one of the most exciting things ever, guys, okay? Just to keep it brief, 7 months later, I started making a 6-figure income with tech sales, okay? So even before that, I had some months where there was a month where I made like my 3rd month in HubSpot in a tech company of this stature was like 8,400. Okay, that repeated is 6 figures, but I fluctuated from like 6K per month, 5K, 8K per month, and 7 months in, I started to make like a 6-figure income, right? And now as a BDR and SDR alone, I had crazy months. I had multiple 10K plus months. I think my highest was like 10,800 or something, close to 11 grand, just booking meetings, guys. Okay, 15 months into the role, I promote into account executive. Okay, that's a year and a half, less than a year and a half. Okay, first month as an account executive, I make $18,000 and like 400 something, $18,000 USD and like 400. All right, and then I went on to make repeatable like 10,000 plus per month, like some 10K months. Okay, so that's my journey in tech sales. Okay, throughout that entire 2 years I was at HubSpot. Before that, I was in that other tech company for like 7 months. And yeah, I had the fintech experience that I didn't realize was like an aspect of tech sales. So overall, it was like 3 years in tech sales. Now, I'm saying this very briefly. I'm saying this in a very brief way, but the main things that I want to highlight here are this vehicle is lucrative, okay? AEs have the potential to make 200K plus, 300K plus within like the first 3 years of being an account executive, okay? If you compare that to like doctor, lawyer, all these other things, like those, you have to do like 7+ years of school, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and your starting salary is like 70, 80K per year, and then you work your way up to like, under 200K, or in some cases 200K, 300K, whatever. But, how much investment does that take to get? And is that what you want? Do you want that type of 9-to-5 hourly work, right? Or do you want sales where it's transferable, where you can learn a skill that you can take and improve? It improves automatically your speaking skills, your communication skills, your understanding of the world, relationships, being able to network, right? Being able to have a skill where on demand from anywhere you can make income with it once you learn it, right? Being able to have a skill that's the number one skill for entrepreneurship, the fast lane path. Okay, I think sales is the fast lane path because it puts you on that journey of you separate your time from income. You separate your hourly pay from your time, right? You can make more in an hour depending on how much energy you want to put in. You can work as many hours a week as you want depending on how much energy you want to put in and if you hit your numbers, right? There were months where I hit my numbers within 2 weeks of the month and just kicked back the whole rest of the month or set up the next month. It depends on what you want to do, right? It can be the most free roll out there and the most income potential out there with the least amount of school. It was a no-brainer for me when I found out about it, and it saved me. Okay, I was making 10K a month. I started to invest in mentorships. I started to invest in my health, right? Spirituality, inner work stuff. I was investing in working with coaches and expanding my awareness of the world, reading books, traveling, right? Airbnb hopping. I no longer had to be tied to one location. I was working from different Airbnbs. I even lived out of the country for a while and worked. Okay, and this is what tech sales has allowed me to do, all right? And now I'm in a place where I'm going all in on business, right? I took tech sales as far as I needed to go into the next fast lane vehicle for me, which is building a YouTube business, right? Helping you guys transcend that path that I transcended, right? The struggles that I went through, helping you guys cut the line and do this quicker, right? I ended up doing it, it took me much longer, right? I was 24 years old when I could have done this at 19, right? And so I'm helping you guys learn from my mistakes and get the right role from the start instead of making the mistake I made getting into a startup, and then also getting yourself in a position where a role that has the income potential you want, and also helping you understand why you want it and what's your long-term goal, and helping you unlock the performance in the role to be a top performer and know how what you're doing is contributing to your long-term vision. Okay, so that's kind of the story in the gist, guys. Now, there was ups and downs all throughout tech sales. It's not easy. It's simple. It's not easy. It's simple. But if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and it wouldn't be as lucrative as it is. So you better be grateful that it's easy, that it's simple. Okay. MJ DeMarco talks about this in this book. If you take one thing from this, read Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. It's going to change your paradigm. Okay. Especially if you're someone who's in a 9-to-5 hourly job. Okay. But there's something called low barrier to entry. Okay, there are things that the barrier to entry is so low that everybody's doing it. All right, this is stuff like, I don't know, like stuff that doesn't pay well anymore, like, making like an Etsy store or selling like cheap things online. Like, yes, you can do it in these things, but everybody's doing it. It costs no money to do. Even YouTube can be considered low barrier to entry, but it becomes high barrier to entry when you stick with it, okay? And that's the key with it. But tech sales has a decent barrier to entry. Not everybody can just get a tech sales role, without putting in the effort, obsessing about interviews, and, potentially getting help from a mentor to position themselves right, okay, and crushing it in the role. You got to put the blood, sweat, and tears in. There's a lot of people that get into tech sales that leave, that quit, that feel like they don't want to put up with the unpredictableness of, am I going to hit quota this month, right? But the reality is, if you want to build a life of independence and freedom, sales is the best vehicle because it's going to train you. It's going to help you become the character that attracts the income you're actually after. Because you got to put up with uncertainty in entrepreneurship. You bet, okay? And sales has uncertainty. There's ups, there's downs. There's times when you're making tons of commission. There's times when things are a little bit dry, right? And you just got to push through, and that's just the nature of the game. But over the grand scheme, it's the most lucrative vehicle out there, guys, okay? And so yes, I went through all of those trials, tribulations. I've had a month where I hit 40% of quota and then came back and hit like almost 200%, okay? And that's because you just have to go through some hardship. Everybody does. And if you quit, that's it. You got to start with something else, and you get shiny object like I used to have. If you stick with something and stick with this vehicle, I promise you, it's going to feed you. You're going to change your life. It's going to get easy, right? Don't wish it were easier, because then everyone would do it and it wouldn't pay as much money. Just be better and get paid more and hold yourself to a high standard. All right. That's my story, guys. There's more about it, but I don't want to make this video too long. I'll make other videos on more deeper into my story. But that's how I literally, made 10K per month plus in tech sales, my whole journey. And I'm a living and breathing testimonial that this put me on the fast lane path where I'm now traveling the world, building a business, and I have this skill I can fall back on anytime. And I do sales calls of my own, right? I do them in my own way where it's not high pressure at all. It's just human to human, which I think is the best sales. And some companies actually, lean more that way. But it saved me, guys, and it completely skyrocketed my income and freedom and my vision. Okay. All right. So a couple things. So if you want a free book, I wrote an entire free guide that has gotten people insane results just by reading it alone from absolute scratch, land tech sales roles. Okay. This document is no joke. This book is no joke. Second link in the description is that. Okay. Now, first link in the description, if you want to get a tech sales job and you're a bit overwhelmed by it all, having mentorship, again, like I said, is a great way to fast track your progress to achieve that salary you're looking for and make sure you don't get into a role that actually isn't going to get you what you want. Okay. And if you want help with this is what I do in my business. I help guys just like you who want to fast track their progress, that want to get support and accountability and get handheld through this one-on-one with me. I mentor you on all the stages of the process, wherever you are, until you land a role. And we do this in 90 days. Okay, 90 days. That's 3 months to literally be in a position where you're making 70K plus on target earnings with a clear path to 6 figures. Okay. If you want to learn more about how I can help you and how I help people do that, there'll be a link, first link in the description. You can book in a call with me and see if it might be a good fit for you. So check that out if you're interested in learning about that. And if you want the full breakdown of how you can get a sales job in the next 90 days, I also made a video on the high level stuff about it. Check it out. This is where I give you the step-by-step to help me land a job for myself and my clients in a pretty quick amount of time and make a lucrative income in tech. So check it out. I'm out for now. That's it. Take care. Bye.